ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Christian Guzman, joined by Steve Haller. And this week, Mike Ostrowski, as Andy Pregler, is across the pond, drowning in British beer, as his beloved Arsenal defeated Liverpool 3-1 earlier today. Gentlemen, yeah. We shall not talk about what how Steve and I's clubs are doing right now.
No, we won't. Let's stay this side of the pond. Apparently, we're already getting enough flack for how we're predicting the football season, so we may as well go and do other things.
Well, luckily for our podcast viewers, nothing of football note happened this week, so we really don't have.
It did. I'm going to slightly bring up something.
Wonderful.
Doesn't affect either of you two, but for anyone involved with the season ticket process,
yes.
In standard Q's fashion, seems slightly convoluted because, well, the MyQ site was down and experiencing technical difficulties the entire week. Ended up calling, and as always, the guys at the Dome box office are great to deal with. But like, how do you have everything go live February 2nd and have the website down for multiple days?
That's just American infrastructure for anything.
Oh no, it was down before the launch.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, it was good.
That's a first.
Either way, I can say I've seen more demand for tickets this year than ever before. Ended up actually picking up, I think, 3 extra.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
Yeah, it's I got Seabass officially has a season ticket now. So we we can get him up to the Dome, and a couple friends wanted in. So it seems like there's more hype around the program than we've seen in a while.
And this is where Steve gets Seabass binoculars so he can study offensive line techniques.
Oh, absolutely. You think we're not going to have film sessions before? And no, for the record, I am not that father. But that would be mildly hilarious if I had
Steve walking in Tuesday, Wednesday morning. Alrighty, let's get to it. Here's our preview on Ohio.
Oh yeah, got the whiteboard, got everything going.
Look, Steve, I'll still get you your big boy footage in spring camp, okay?
Absolutely, man. It's much appreciated. So that's probably the extent of our football talk. Football may have been more exciting than most of what happened in the Q sports world this week.
It wasn't as exciting as what has been happening actually on the hallowed turf of the JMA world still, because luckily for probably Syracuse fans right now, lacrosse season has started, and there's a lot of optimism about lacrosse season given the carryover from last year in terms of the momentum that was starting to build as Gary Gay continued to get his feet under him as a men's lacrosse college head coach, and as and getting his recruits and the staff settled under him. And that started with a good old shellacking of Vermont, 20-7 over the Catamounts. Much more comfortable than last year's really weird, very awkward 7-5 game last year. Mike was in the Dome, and you could breathe a sigh of relief after the somewhat shaky first quarter.
Somewhat shaky, like 5 minutes, and then they woke up. I'll take it. Yeah, I'm glad that it was not like last year's again, where the entire game we were wondering, this isn't going to become a thing, right? It's just Vermont has really good defense, right? Right? No, this is a very impressive looking Syracuse offense to start off. First point for me, remember how Gary Gate got a guy from Lehigh last year named Cole Kirst, and he ended up being a big part of the attack?
Indeed. And for those who don't know, Gary Gate found another Lehigh guy.
Oh, yeah, he did. Christian Moulet, first game in Orange, he got a hat trick, first goal of the new season. Yeah, pretty solid. That I don't think I can really overstate how important it is that Gary Gait got more help on the attack, because they were a great team while they were on the man up last year, possibly the best team in the entire country while on the man up. But in even strength, they struggled at stretches. And, well, now you've got your big wing guy, and he looked fantastic.
Dare I say he wasn't the most important transfer on the day, though?
No, not really.
No.
Before we get to who probably was, let's get to the other guys who were also impactful in the midfield, because those guys were the probably the highlights coming in for most people as a neutral lacrosse fan. We're talking about the two Princeton transfers and Jake Stevens and Sam English, who both also had very, very good games in their debuts as Syracuse Orange lacrosse players.
And very good two-way games from both of them as well, both getting involved in the offensive end, but also breaking up some counterattacks in the midfield. And where Syracuse struggled more so last season was absolutely on the back end. I'm just going to say from first impressions, Will Mark is not going to have to face 60 shots from Duke again this year. We're not going to have to do that again. So, progress.
And luckily, Will Mark also looks like he's still Will Mark, which is just a positive for everyone.
For Christian, can we just start singing Will Mark's on fire? Various
Yes,
points in the
indeed.
season? Okay.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we will have to educate the dumb crowd on how to say na 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 na.
Oh,
Euros 2020 for anyone who is not familiar.
Yep. We'll go just Google Will Grigg and yeah.
And
Enjoy.
it will make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Let's get to that important transfer that Syracuse so desperately needed.
Right.
Because
the transfer that saw the least amount of field time by design, but also the most important field time.
Because if you are a Syracuse lacrosse fan of any generation, you know that Syracuse has traditionally, and really just in general throughout its entire program history, has always struggled with faceoffs. And there were a lot of options that Gary Gait had in terms of who to go for in the transfer portal and who to try to lure to Syracuse through the transfer portal just to try and get some help. And it feels like Gary Gait found his guy. And he comes from the Division III ranks.
And if you didn't see that in the game notes, you would not have thought he came from the Division III ranks, because he had a fantastic game in the X. So Syracuse on the day won 21 of 31 faceoffs. I believe it was 18 of 24 that Mason Cohn won.
16 of 24.
16 of 24, sorry. Still very, very good.
Yeah.
Still above the requisite 50% mark that you want Syracuse to at least win.
Yeah.
And that's all you really need to know. And well, we'll see how it goes, further on. I'm not sure how many faceoffs Colgate won against Penn State. By the way, we're recording this on Sunday. Syracuse takes on Colgate tomorrow, so it's a literal one-day break, and then bam, you're taking on a Colgate men's lacrosse team who just upset Penn State, who is ranked number 4 in the country on the weekend. So that is going to be set up for another barn burner between the two Central New York teams.
And this is where you ignore that you have a guy from PA in the room.
Sorry.
I mean, it's Penn State. I'm used to this stuff happening, but
long gone are the days of a Met. But still, but this is a good Penn State roster that Colgate just went into Happy Valley and upset. And I believe Colgate's coming in with a new faceoff guy. Yes, and Colgate actually lost on the faceoffs. They only went 12 of 29 on faceoffs against the Nittany Lions. So this will be an interesting test for Syracuse because, as we know, Colgate's not a pushover. Never has been. And that's where probably still the weakest part of this team needs to kind of pick it up a bit, and that's the Coast defense. It continues to be the weakest part of this team, but given the changes that are now in, based on the new guys that are starting, there's a lot of hope and promise, at least from my point of view, with the close defenders, Riley Figueres and Billy Dwan, Caden Cole. All look pretty good, but Figueres is really the big linchpin who finally gets to make his debut in an orange uniform and looked pretty good doing so.
Yeah, and to me, I think the biggest question mark of them is Dwan. We saw he had a great kind of taking himself goal, just rushing all the way up from in the back, like off a rebound off Will Mark and taking it all the way down the field and scoring. But we also saw him commit a couple costly turnovers that led to Vermont goals. So out of the three, he's the one that I'm going to be watching the most these next couple of weeks to see if he can kind of keep those moments in check of just play the easy parts of the game fine. I really think that the two, just other than two mental mistakes, he played really well.
And this will this is not an easy stretch for it's not really easy for Syracuse just in general. This early part of the season, and it really goes to show just how gruesome this schedule is for Syracuse, because Colgate's not going to be a pushover, and then right after Colgate, a Friday game against Manhattan, who is looking to take it to their old head coach, John Darina. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he is now Syracuse's new defensive coordinator, who was Manhattan's head coach. So they're looking for a little bit of revenge. And then you got Maryland coming to the Dome in 2 weeks' time. So
there's been no lacrosse played at Maryland over the years.
No.
Although I guess because they have a ridiculous Fogo last year.
I believe so, but this is still a Maryland team that's only 2 years off of winning a championship. So
oh yeah,
not too many. While there's certainly turnover there, it's still going to be a talented squad.
Yeah, crazy. Also, one thing we're forgetting is, or just haven't mentioned yet, Joey Spallina just did Joey Spallina things.
You kind of expect 3 goals and 4 assists from Spallina every game, and that's what he did.
But did you expect that 1 assist to look like it did?
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. I guess it's just
Joey,
what you do.
It's Joey Spallina. We're referencing a behind the back assist that he fed to, I believe it was Stevens on the crease. And the Spallina's good.
Well,
I said as a live tweeting that should be a SportsCenter top 10 moment.
Yeah, should be. A no look behind the back, just dump it down to him. Yeah, it was a thing of beauty. If you haven't seen it, go take a look. But as the not lacrosse guy here, it was really pretty.
And as the still kind of learning about lacrosse, but getting more and more into it, yes, it was very, very nice.
He is the linchpin as to why so many people are so excited for Syracuse lacrosse. You don't get given 22 as a freshman almost ever.
Right.
So the fact he got it as a freshman, lived up to it, and continues to live up to it now, this goes to show you how important he's going to be for Syracuse.
Yeah. Can we find somebody like that on the football side and give him 44?
I thought that was LaQuinn Allen. Are we just not doing that?
No, that was Sean Tucker.
It was also Sean Tucker, but
I'll give it to him. I don't care. It's fine with me. Get it back in the rotation. But, that's a conversation for another day. Unless we want to go into that conversation now, but I don't think we do.
No, I don't think we do.
We could easily eat up the last 44 minutes on 44. So,
if it keeps us from having to talk about what happened to the basketball team, that might be a wise choice.
We can delay that pain a little bit.
Basketball played this week? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, the women.
The women. Yeah, the women. It was unfortunate. It was unfortunate that they lost to Louisville at the KFC Yum Center, but rebound nicely with a win today against Boston College.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
that's-
true. Very true. Still ranked, surely. Been a great season for FLJ and Co. So
Yeah.
I think we could spend about 45 minutes on that, right?
Yeah, Dyche Fair did her usual thing and dropped 38 points today against the Boston College Eagles.
Yeah, 38. That's a
Mhm.
number.
That is indeed a number.
I think I'm getting up to the. I think actually, we're bringing my son's Cub Scout pack up to the Dome for one of the games in February. So it'll be good to see what they're doing at that point. But the fact that this team is ranked and doing what they're doing, I mean, they lost 2 games to ranked teams over the past 8 days or so. Well, 7 days, because that was the Virginia Tech game was when we recorded last.
Yeah, and that was a tough loss because Syracuse went down early by a ton in the first half, battled all the way back to coming within 3 or 4 by halftime, and then unfortunately the Hokies were just a little bit too good down the stretch.
Yeah, and that, I mean, all games, you know, they knocked off Notre Dame, and then lost to Virginia Tech and Louisville, as you mentioned, and then rebounded, like Christian said, against Boston College. They're even the games they lost, the scoreboard probably doesn't give the right character to. This team is kind of crazy that they're doing what they're doing, and in the discussions that they're in for, like, I mean, prior to the Louisville game, it was like, how high of a top 4 seed are they going to get?
Yeah,
like they're right on that, you know,
they're on the cusp of potentially hosting
yeah,
a first round game.
which going into this season, would we have remotely thought that?
No, they were on bubble talk this season,
Right.
at the beginning of this season.
I mean, if you know, they've got Georgia Tech, and then a week from today, when we record next, we'll see how they do hosting Louisville. So that'll kind of be a good bellwether as to where the rest of the season is going to go, I think.
Indeed. And you feel like that's the game they have to win in order to continue their talk of potentially getting a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament.
That is kind of crazy. They host Louisville and then travel to Miami, at Virginia, home against Duke, home against Pittsburgh, at NC State to finish out the year.
And speaking of that Duke game, technically not official yet, but there will be somewhat of a student camp out for that. There's supposedly enough interest now, so
that'll be very good for them.
I mean,
Not enough interest.
Estimate to what?
Not enough interest for a men's camp out this year.
Yeah, not so much.
Let's eat our vegetables, gentlemen.
All right. Do we want to just hit halftime while we're at it?
Indeed, my friends. Even though it's not halftime yet, it's halftime, which means we like to thank our sponsors of this podcast, Home Field Apparel. Thank you so much, Home Field, for making some of the comfiest shirts, joggers, bomber jackets, you name it. They probably have it for all your throwback Syracuse or any other college brand needs. You can visit their website and use the code NUNES23, that's NUNES23 at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your first Home Field Apparel order. Again, go to checkout and use code NUNES23, NUNES23 at checkout for 10% off your first order at Home Field Apparel.
In obscure schools that they've added recently, we have the University of Milwaukee.
Yes, that's actually a very good one. Mm-hmm.
The Panthers, who apparently were formerly the Green Gulls, Wisconsin State College Green Gulls, which, okay, like the vintage Panthers logos were great, but a seagull wearing an old school football helmet is kind of amazing.
All right. Let's do it.
All right. Do we have to?
We do. This week for Syracuse men's basketball. This week for Syracuse men's basketball has not been great. Crashing back down to earth in a heavy way by losing to Boston College on Tuesday, 80-75, and then an absolute shellac against Wake Forest, 99-70, in which Syracuse did not look competitive at all, getting outshot just on field goal percentage by over 25% to Wake Forest.
Yeah, and that puts them 14-8 on the year, 5-6 in conference.
And this is a team that already had shaky tournament looks going in, and now those are very, very rocky now because you feel like Syracuse needed to at least keep up the trend of yo-yoing wins and losses, which it had been doing in January. But as you start February now, this is the wrong way to start February.
Yeah, and apparently, are they going to win on the road the rest of the year?
That remains to be seen.
Well, they can at least they play Louisville on the road.
There is, I mean, this is a Louisville team that somehow did beat Florida State.
Right.
They only show up against Florida schools.
This is
Just,
true.
don't remind Dom about that.
Yeah. I'm going to be right back. You two discuss why this team is in trouble.
Let me count the ways. I mean, and I say this as someone who was not able to catch the game this week, the BC game at least, or no, the Wake game for various issues. Saw the BC mess. I don't know what to make of this team. Like BC on the road, Conte Forum is not. We're not talking the Cameron Crazies here. The crowd there was primarily orange, as it usually is. Somehow they head to Chestnut Hill and just can't put anything together. Followed up with a complete stinker on Saturday. This is coming off a week and change ago, the mess against Florida State. What is going on with this team, Mike?
To be completely honest, Steve, I wish I had that answer, but it's just.
So does Coach Autry based on his presser.
Oh yes. Now I'll take a quick time out, I guess, and give Coach Red some respect for. I do like how he's tried to play a little hands off and try to let some of the internal situations sort themselves out. But after a performance like that, where nobody did squat, that is a rare time where it is deserved to come out and say to everyone that, like, yeah, our team played like crap and we've got to own up to it. I'll give him a lot of credit there.
Yeah, he kind of downplayed it after the Florida State game. He kind of downplayed it a little after the BC loss. He just, like you said, give him time to breathe, see if they can figure it out. I believe he flat out said that he was embarrassed in the press conference. So,
yes, he did.
Red definitely taking it to heart as to what's going on. When you're watching this team, you're seeing. I don't even know. The offense is sputtering. The defense is sputtering. The defense, weirdly, by metrics, looks better than what we've seen in past years. I see a lot of people harping on that, but by advanced metrics, they're still holding into a relatively decent, like an above average defense compared to the mess that we had seen the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know where you want to point the finger toward any sort of main problem. My brain says the lack of scoring is what's killing things at this point, but I don't know. Any preference as to which side of the ball foots the blame here?
Steve, not just the lack of scoring, but really the lack of scoring plays. Remember how the last 2 years were like everyone trying to play iso ball and eventually chucking a three because they couldn't get anywhere near the basket?
Yeah, in the beginning of this year where we were like, oh, they're not doing that. This is great.
Yeah, well, guess what? They're starting to do it again.
Yeah.
Except the problem is now they can't shoot threes. Maybe, right. and the one person who has been starting to shoot threes with a little more efficiency, JJ Starling, barely got the ball in the game against Wake Forest. I want to say he went almost 10 minutes without, maybe not 10, more like 8 or 9 minutes without making a shot in the first half.
Yeah, and this is coming off who did he drop 26 on? Was that the BC loss or was that the game before that?
That was NC State.
Yeah. So he's relatively, he's a hot hand relatively recently. You would think feed him, but apparently that is not what the thought was. I don't want to point the finger at Mintz. I don't want to point the finger at anyone, but like we're seeing some of that hero ball, ISO ball that you were talking about that we had seen in the past. Whether that's something they can work their way through. I know Judah's putting a lot on his shoulders. I know our supposed shooters are not able to shoot at present. With McLeod gone, it's putting Brown in a weird spot at the 5. Like there's a lot of things happening with this team that any one of them could be a major point leading to this downfall, but it's almost like the culmination of them. It's akin to what's been happening with football the past couple of years almost, where it's like death by 1,000 cuts of like, okay, if Taylor's not hitting, that could be fine. Somebody else will. If Bell's not hitting, that could be fine. Somebody else will. Oh, McLeod went down with an injury. Okay, Brown will pick that up, but maybe we shift some play somewhere else. There's all these little things that keep happening. Westry goes down for the season-ending injury, which at this point I'm assuming is going to be season-ending because we haven't seen him at this juncture. I doubt we're going to.
Yeah, look, Athletics hasn't officially confirmed it, but yeah, it's season-ending.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. At this juncture, if nobody's confirmed it by this juncture, then where there's smoke, there's fire. But like, I don't know. Is there a way to fix it? I guess is the question, the $1 million question, and one that Red's probably asking himself a lot right now.
Yeah, the question that just about everyone living in the 315 is asking themselves right now. When you've got, and I believe I touched on this the last time I was on with James, there's really no easy way to fix when you have to play not one but two players out of position, out of necessity, because you just don't have a big.
Yep.
Because McLeod's out for the year. Hema has been very, very, very limited. So
he's got to be carrying a knock or something.
Yeah.
And then what we've seen out of Carey recently, there's promise, but there's a lot of raw.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And at this juncture, you really can't expect more than like 10-ish minutes from him a night. And even that might be pushing it at some points, depending on how quick his fouls start to run up. So you've got to play Malik at the 5 for about 30 minutes a night. And then you get into the 3-4 situation with Taylor and Bell. I'm of the opinion that they really shouldn't be on the court together as much as they are, not because I don't particularly dislike them. I honestly think those two maybe get a little too much slack, but it's just not a good pairing because neither one can really fill the role of playing the 4 on the defensive end. And then you try to see both of them overcompensate on the offensive end. Bell trying to force shots really bad, which happened against Wake Forest. It's happened several times in recent games. And then Taylor just is in a complete rut, and I really don't know how you fix that. He started to break out of it in Wake Forest, but you can't depend on, okay, like every 5th game, Taylor is going to add something to the offense.
You could say the same about Bell as well, because Bell is just as streaky. And the problem is, like you said, both are 3s. And you have 2 4s on your roster. It's just unfortunate that one of those 4s has to be your starting 5, and your backup 5, and your third option 5.
Yeah. We were just waxing poetic about the Peter Carey situation of, hey, he showed a little promise, but he's really, really raw. And at this point in the season, you can't afford raw. The thing with Taylor and Bell, like you said, having them both on the field. Yeah, having them both on the field at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Continue.
I mean, technically they are on the field if they're playing in the dome.
I mean, they're 3 and 4, but they're not in the 3-4.
Oh God, here we go. No, they like having them both on the court at the same time. Spacing is odd. Like you have 2 guys that should both, like you're saying, Christian, playing the 3. Having to do things that are slightly unnatural to them. You also have, your 1 and 2 both kind of competing for some of the same space. It's like there's a lot of areas that are duplicatively covered without having a outlet for like you've got two guys, you've got the space covered for 3 positions by 5 people, and it's not making things work.
And if we're really being honest, I more see Taylor as a 2 instead of a 3.
Yeah,
even.
you've been on the Taylor as a 2 train for a good bit.
Because Taylor is literally Buddy 2.0.
Yeah.
So like he came in almost exactly with the same size and height as Buddy. He's built pretty much the same. I mean, how they look similar kind of as well.
Yeah.
Both of them are 3-point specialists. So the unfortunate thing is that Syracuse has someone else playing the 2 right now. And once he got his shoulder fixed, has actually played it pretty well. So, like right now, like Taylor is being played out of pure necessity instead of being played in his best position, which is just kind of unfortunate. And I don't think Syracuse really has found a way to get the best out of Taylor, just generally. But unfortunately, he's the best body right now to fill in just of what essentially Syracuse just has limited options in, and that's a power forward position. Yeah, and I don't remember where I saw this poll. It might have been from Q Sports Talk on Twitter about if going into the offseason, what would be Syracuse's biggest need. And a lot of people were saying on that Twitter poll were saying shooters. I went for big man, a 4, because if you get someone else who can fit into that 4 slot, it helps the lineup balance so much easier. And this is something I brought up to James at the beginning of the season on his podcast when we were just first starting out this basketball season, is that lineup balance would be very, really difficult for Syracuse. And it continues to get even more so with Naheem McLeod out for the season, with Chance Restry not playing this season, and from the looks of it, won't play this season since we haven't gotten any definite yes or no from Adrian Autry about whether he's going to play or not. It looks like not. Let's be honest. If he's not playing at this point, he's not going to play. Let's just put it out there.
We did about 5 minutes ago, but you were gone, so we'll give you a pass.
Mm-hmm. Now you've got multiple people saying it, guys. So
yep.
And so lineup balance was always going to be difficult for Syracuse. And so if you can figure out a way to get a good 4 or even another 5 to help McLeod out, lineup balance has been difficult since the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And it continues to be so far this year. And really the only way that Syracuse wins games now is if someone gets hot on the offensive end.
Right. And we're talking like you're saying that's the thing we need. We are getting a very solid recruit in Donnie Freeman in at the 4. However, I don't know if he's a step right in type guy. Like he's a very solid 4-star, but is he a guy who's going to come in and immediately make a difference?
And is he a guy that's going to fit what Syracuse needs? Because of the limited highlights I've seen of Donnie Freeman, he's a stretch 4. Who wants to be
which
a
also
shooter.
fits right into the space that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, because Syracuse does not need to stretch the floor anymore with the shooters that they already have. Because let's face it, Taylor and Bell are shooters. They want to shoot. And you don't need more people lounging around on the perimeter waiting for them to magically get open.
Yeah. Another point to make about this team, if anybody doesn't realize it, they are stupid young.
No, really, what makes
absolutely
you say
ridiculously young?
What makes you say that pretty much everyone who gets meaningful minutes is a sophomore?
Pretty much everyone on the roster is a sophomore.
Yeah, there's Benny is the only junior.
Munir, I think, is a junior too, right?
I believe he has a red shirt. Or if
he might, he might be eligible.
Well, yeah, he has played 3 years.
Okay,
right.
Because one at Duquesne and 2 now at Syracuse.
Right, and I don't know what McLeod's status is, but he's somewhere in that
area.
Plus or minus sophomore junior range. But all of them are in that like niche. It's kind of crazy actually when you think about it. But yeah, at guard, Copeland, Mintz, Starling, Cuff, all sophomores. Taylor sophomore, Bell, sophomore. Malik Brown, sophomore. What? Westry's a redshirt freshman. Patterson exists. And
Yeah,
Carey's a
redshirt
redshirt
freshman.
freshman. So yeah, that's, I mean, the roster is, and you're going to have your growing pains on a roster that young. And
You
here
mean-
we are seeing those growing pains.
Especially since Syracuse isn't getting Kyle Filipowski's and Carter Flags of the world.
Right.
Or Cooper Flags, excuse me. But still, you know what I mean.
Right. No, but they will be facing this guy called Armando Baycott next week.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's going to be like, I love Malik Brown. Him and Baycott is not going to be a phenomenal matchup.
Malik Brown is turning more and more into Marek Dolezaj every single day.
Yes.
And
Mark
unfortunately,
Dolezaj with longer hair.
yes,
Maybe less pizza. I don't know.
probably.
Yeah,
But
to be fair,
the-
it doesn't take much to have less pizza than Mark Dolezaj.
But also, that means he has the same size and almost nearly not necessarily the same body composition because Brown is a bit more muscular than Dolezaj. But it's not by much when you compare it to Armando Baycott.
Oh, I did misspeak, by the way. That game is next Tuesday, so we still have another pod before that one. This week is the aforementioned Louisville matchup that Mike mentioned, and we get to host the homecoming for Joseph Girard III and decide to play Ian Schifferlin and the Clemson Tigers.
So I would suggest Adrian Autry not to play 2-3 out of bounds on that day.
Listen, I've been saying this all year. Girard is going to drop like 27 and still screw up on the final play, and that's how it's going to end.
Well, but the thing is, Girard is now filling that magical role that always seems to happen in a Syracuse season. Random guy goes off for ungodly amount of threes against Syracuse defense because he is random.
Yeah, and that's what he did when he was in a Syracuse jersey, so I guess it fits.
Mhm.
Zero consistency and sometimes goes off for way too many points. I guess the question being, on the flip side, do you just give the ball to Starling or Mintz and say go at Girard because we know he's not going to guard anyone?
Are you guys Chris Smooth fans?
No.
Oh, you don't know the legend of Chris Smooth, NBA 2K YouTuber legend? He has whenever he does his NBA micro modes, he usually has that one guy we'll call the anyone offense, and it's usually Steph Curry.
Yep.
So when he plays 2K, give the ball to, we're running that whoever offense on Steph Curry. Whoever Steph Curry is guarding, you give the ball to him. Syracuse is probably going to run to whoever offense on Joe Girard.
Yes.
Whoever Girard is guarding, give the ball to them.
Right. And if anyone knows tendencies of Joseph Girard III, it's probably Red Autry and Jerry McNamara. So hopefully that helps because we may. I mean, this is the home trip for Clemson, but
Yes.
And now here's the interesting query: does Girard get cheered or booed? Probably both, but which is more?
He gets cheered more to start, but as soon as the game starts, he gets booed the entire game.
That tracks probably.
yeah, okay, I can see that.
Mhm.
That would fit.
This indeed does track. We're in for a interesting end to Syracuse basketball, who desperately needs wins to continue getting into the tournament, to try and even sniff the tournament. Right now, there are a good number of teams away looking outside in.
They probably need 5 or 6. I mean, they're 14-8.
You would think, you would think they would need to get to at least 20, and that's probably not even enough.
No, that's probably putting them firmly on the bubble.
Yeah, which would be
it's basically get to 20, and then you've also got to do some damage in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, and not only that, but you got to get to 20 against the right teams as well, because as many people have bemoaned online, Syracuse's net ranking isn't exactly the prettiest to look at.
Right. Now beating Louisville, not moving the needle anywhere.
No.
Clemson at the Dome, I believe, would be a Q1.
Let me look that up actually.
But
So in order to qualify for a home win, I believe you have to be 35 or higher.
it's 30 or 35.
And I'm pretty sure Clemson is actually nowhere near that. Oh, well, no, they're pretty close. They're 37, so it'd be
Okay.
it would be literally scraping it potentially.
Right.
If
So that's one of those where it's quad 2 for now, but could turn into quad 1 later.
Right.
Yeah, indeed.
UNC at home, that would be a quad 1. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
No.
And so quad 1 at home is up to 30 only. So it actually for Clemson, it's still a little ways to go.
That's still a push.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech on the road. I have no idea where they're at.
I had Syracuse's schedule up here. We'll go a little bit earlier. Yes, and so Georgia Tech right now is 124. So it's not actually looking really great.
Right. That's not helping anyone, even on the road. NC State on the road is probably a 2.
NC State on the road is 77. That is, I believe, just outside looking in.
Right.
Just outside looking in for a quad 1, because 75 is 75 on the road is quad 1.
So that's one to watch, but it's also on the road, which we haven't really traveled all that well.
Yeah, so here's the breakdown on warlandnolan.com if you're watching on the live stream right now.
You did the smart thing and actually pulled it up with this
website is
like I did.
Exactly. This website is great, warlandnolan.com, because I can actually go to a different if I go to a different tab up here, we can look at Syracuse's net distribution right now.
Oh, wow.
And see that currently 1-6 for quad 1 wins.
Yeah, not great.
Not great. That old quad 1 win being hanging on to the Pittsburgh victory, because Pittsburgh is hanging on to that 69 nice net ranking.
That is crazy.
Again, if you're curious, Syracuse is 84 in the net rankings.
Yeah, so Clemson away would be quad 1, Virginia Tech at home, and Notre Dame at home. I don't believe either would be at home.
No. So Clemson on the road would be quad 1. Louisville, Virginia Tech, this is quad 2 at home.
So the only chances for quad 1 in general are the Clemson road game.
Potentially both Clemson games, potentially.
Right. And then Tech.
Not Tech. Tech is probably not getting up there. And then it's
NC State.
NC State. And then if you can somehow sneak one over North Carolina at home.
They would.
I mean, Georgia Tech did it.
Sleeping. Like literally sleeping.
Georgia Tech did it. The reason why Syracuse can't. Remember, Georgia Tech has 3 of the weirdest wins at home.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech has this win over North Carolina at home. This win over Clemson at home.
No, that's on the road even.
On the road. Yes. Excuse me. Yes.
That is crazy.
And also this one over Duke.
What?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Told you they have some of the weirdest wins. Those are their only 3 wins in ACC play.
And then they lost by
Clemson.
5 at Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? How?
This is a weird team.
You lose by 10 to Pitt at home, but can somehow lose to Duke at Cameron by 5 and beat them at home. What is this world twisted?
Just playing to the competition, Steve.
Something like that.
So again, if you're watching on the live stream right now, this is what Syracuse's remaining schedule looks like, and you can see their net and RPI rankings next to them as well. We'll even zoom in a little bit so that you can see a little bit better on your screens.
So Clemson really is liked by the RPI, but not so much by the net, it seems.
Indeed, yeah. And the net does favor, from what I've seen, smashing opponents a bit more. So, I mean, some of Clemson's wins have been kind of close. So there isn't that much more opportunity to pick up good wins. Obviously, if you lose one of those Louisville, Tech, Notre Dame games, you're
done.
You're done. Yeah. I mean, this Boston College loss was already bad enough to begin with. Same with the Florida State loss, since both teams are just in the 90s in net.
Well, the Florida State loss, like Boston, BC is a Q2 because it was on the road.
Indeed.
So at least there's that. But like that Florida State loss is
Florida State loss is in Q3.
Yeah.
That's Syracuse's only Q3 loss, which is still not. Which while Syracuse is 6-1 in Q3, tournament teams don't usually have many Q3 losses.
By many, you mean any, right? Maybe that one.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe the Georgia Tech over Duke thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, boys, this is a weird season.
And indeed is. And it's tough to actually, like, we probably won't know how Syracuse is going to go until if they can grab wins over Clemson and NC State, I think you feel a little bit more confident. If you split the Clemson games and you win over NC State, I think it's still tough. But then you assume that you get wins over Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Notre Dame. That's 2 wins over Louisville, a win over Notre Dame, a win over Tech, and then splitting one of the Clemson games and winning a North Carolina State game gets you to 21. And I think you're in a decent position to where if you win an ACC tournament game, you think you're okay in getting into the tournament just barely.
See, the problem with those Clemson games, though, is if you win one of them, which one do you want to win?
The one on the road. Which is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, I guess the Q1 win is better than the Q2 loss.
Yes.
And then also the whole momentum thing, you're probably, like, in that case, you assume you beat Notre Dame, beat Louisville, probably beat Virginia Tech.
I don't think they beat Virginia Tech. But yes, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll forget Virginia Tech.
So there's a chance there.
There's a chance.
Assume they've won 3 out of 4, or ideally at least 4 out of 5 to end the year. You get some kind of momentum going into the ACC tournament. Maybe a little recency bias if they're like really on the fringe for one of those like last 4 spots. But you hope to not be in that situation.
So the swing games, unfortunately, are Clemson and North Carolina State. Which, boy, the Syracuse games at North Carolina State, no matter what sport, are always weird.
Yep.
Very.
Yeah.
I can tell you real quick, my first ever in-person Syracuse game was actually a football game, not basketball. A football game, and you might guess which one it was because it was during the good year. And it was the game where both teams forgot what defense was and ended up being 51-41.
Mm. Wasn't that UNC and not NC State?
No,
that was NC State.
Okay.
UNC that year was the one where Tommy DeVito won it in overtime.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm thinking that.
Yeah.
That was such a weird ass game. It was not as weird as the Pitt Syracuse game that I was present for that I believe set the NCAA record for points in a game.
Okay.
The 76-61.
Yeah.
Again, I will always remember that game for a multitude of reasons. One is because at the exact same time, I was in the Barclays Center covering a Syracuse, South Carolina men's basketball game, which ironically scored fewer points than Syracuse Pitt did that day.
That does not surprise me.
And the second reason I like to bring that up is because of Steve's team, because of who the Pitt quarterback was that day in that record-setting day. The Pitt quarterback on that day, if I remember correctly, was Nathan Peterman.
Oh, it may have been. It may have been. Oh, God.
The man, the myth, the legend. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
And
He
we
was-
managed to sneak in football somehow for the people.
2015 to 2016. He was at Pitt.
Yep.
Tracks. Great.
Remember, for those who aren't familiar, Steve is a Buffalo Bills fan and reluctantly saw Nathan Peterman in a Buffalo Bills uniform.
There were a lot of reluctant quarterbacks over the years.
Look, I'm going to assume it was in Buffalo and not in the soccer stadium in LA, correct?
Oh, boy. I forgot that they played in.
It was Nathan Peterman.
Yes.
You know what? I am mildly impressed though. This year, we did play a football game. No, we didn't. Never mind. Damn. I was going to say we played a football game in the former in a soccer stadium. Seeing the Meadowlands will be the host of the 2026 World Cup final, but we didn't play in the Meadowlands. We played at Yankee Stadium. So,
for those who aren't familiar with the game that Steve and I are talking about, this is the legendary 76-61 game between Syracuse and Pitt on the final day of the 2016 regular season.
yes, with
The legend Zach Mahoney at 400.
Officer Mahoney.
Officer Mahoney throwing for 440 yards, 5 touchdowns. Nathan Peterman only throwing 18 times, completing 9 passes. Half of his passes went for touchdowns, ladies and gentlemen.
I believe Mahoney was our third string quarterback.
He was either second or third.
Yeah,
Amba Editawa went for 178 yards. Pitt legend James Conner for 115 on the ground and 2 touchdowns to go along with it as well.
I'm just looking at Sean Riley, that nice 1 catch of the day.
Nope. Kick returns though made up for it.
Yeah. Steve, we have to backtrack really quick because you said Yankee Stadium is not a soccer stadium. There's a somewhat NYCFC supporter in the room that disagrees.
You were an NYCFC supporter?
Oh,
That's horrific.
Okay. The whole reason I kind of sort of used to support NYCFC is because of the Man City connection.
You're a Man City supporter? That's even more horrific.
I'm a Sergio Aguero supporter. I barely even follow them anymore.
That is more tolerable.
Like, I'll be completely honest. I've definitely fallen out of touch with Euro football recently.
You're talking.
Yeah, I have too, but that's because
We're
Chelsea
talking.
looks
You're
like a
talking
hot
two
trash
guys.
can fire.
Yeah, who are slowly turning into that as well.
So,
I guess if you want to get one little last American football thing is, Steve, did you happen to get like kind of the normal seats that you had before?
we won't know until May.
Right.
We got to put our deposit down now, and then we won't know until May whether or not we actually can get the seats I've had for a decade. So, whatever. I mean, it happens. It is what it is. It happens every other place besides here, which I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, it's not an abnormal thing. It's just
the fact that it's
thing
happening for the first time in like forever.
Right. So, I, for one, will welcome our new seat-laden overlords. If you are interested in finding out what those seats look like and are not at a basketball game where they're showing them, you should check out Mike's article that he put up on the site last week. They look fine. They look like seats. I'm fine with that. Any thoughts beyond that, Mike?
They are a whole hell of a lot more comfortable than the bleachers.
Yes.
And like they look pretty thin compared to most stadium seats, but also at the same time, I'm mostly a baseball / like NFL football guy. So
right. Without having to endure the elements, maybe they can be thinner.
Yeah. I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about there. So they are comfortable. They are more roomy, like noticeably more roomy. So that's a plus.
There you
I'm
go.
sure people aren't going to like the no cup holder thing. I mean, it's kind of whatever to me.
I mean, to replace all the cup holders we had in our current situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes
Oh,
no
no.
sense. But
Yeah.
whatever.
As we've learned quite recently, people online like to complain about the smallest things.
This is true.
But if you want some good news to end it off on, Buddy Boeheim scored 30 points in the Pistons G League team tonight with 6 threes. So a very good night for Buddy Boeheim as he continues to try and make his way back into the NBA.
Yeah, that seems solid.
I mean this in the most genuine, curious way. How is he dropping 30 in the G League and not finding a way to make it to the Pistons roster right now?
You do ask great questions. Oh, boy. This just goes to show that the Pistons need Dan Campbell.
None of it makes any sense.
Which is why the Pistons need Dan Campbell.
And BC needs Bill Belichick.
BC does need Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick going to BC would be the funniest thing. BC is actually kind of screwed. Because who is BC getting for a head coach right now? At this point,
they missed
of the
Dino
year?
by a week, so I really don't know.
Do you think Dino would literally go to BC?
No, it'd be a giant troll. I genuinely think he was only interested in going back to the West Coast, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, for those who don't know, BC head coach, football head coach Jeff Hafley is joining the Packers as their defensive coordinator. Packers fans rejoicing because they get rid of Vanilla Joe Barry, but that means they now have Jeff Hafley, who was in his right a very good DC with Ohio State during its glory years. But now he gets back on the defensive end of this ball. He was saying that he's glad that he can go back to focusing on football and not having to worry about NIL and recruiting and all that stuff that detracted from just coaching football. Which is, a fair take. Since
Right.
That's really what, as Frank Brown has showed, you really have to be good at that part of football.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure he is.
Yep, and BC now has to scramble to find a head coach. And Steve has already identified that most of BC's offensive linemen are probably heading for the NFL draft. So that's not good for trying to steal their very good offensive linemen.
Yeah, there's 2 guys coming back. One of them's a legacy BC kid, and I can't remember the other one. Seemed very unlikely to come. So, alas, the one good thing BC tends to produce, we are not able to capitalize on.
Indeed. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. There will not be a podcast next week because there is a small event called the Superb Owl that is taking place next week. So I'm pretty sure most of you will be tuning in to watch that instead of listening to talking heads talking about Syracuse athletics.
Yeah, if there's any news that breaks or something we need to pod about, we might hit it on Monday or something like that. But definitely no regularly scheduled Saturday or Sunday programming.
All I'm going to say is we were robbed of Eminem versus Taylor as a Super Bowl.
That would have been electric. That would have
We have Bobby Weir from the Grateful Dead. Come on, against Taylor.
Oh my God.
I want them to perform at the 2 of them to perform at halftime.
Oh, that would be really funny.
That'd be great. San Francisco's finest, baby.
Well, we're running it back like we did. What was it? 2-3 years ago? I completely forget when that last Super Bowl was between the Niners and the Chiefs. Oh, we're running that back.
It happened a month before COVID. So
right, it did. Yes.
Okay.
Right, I did forget.
Let's not do that thing again.
Yeah.
Let's not do that thing again. So yeah. Go Chiefs. No, I'm joking.
No.
With what we say at the end of this podcast, before we will say what we say at the end of this podcast, before we say thank you for watching the Disloyal Idiots podcast. If you're watching live, thank you always for watching live. Not next week, but we'll return on most Sundays 8 p.m. on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter on Disloyal Idiots. If you're watching on your podcast platform of choice, we thank you for always listening and tuning in. Make sure you go rate us 5 stars, leave a like, share with your friends, leave a comment, do all those fun things so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Gentlemen, thank you always so much for joining me. Remains to be seen if Andy Pregler will be joining us back or not in a less inebriated state after enjoying the wins of enjoying the fruits of the labor of an Arsenal win. We'll see about that. But now we get to say what we always say at the end of this podcast. Go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.